It's the Robert Saviola Show, starring Robert Saviola, featuring our gangsters in government. It's time to meet the players, the president and his cast of czars, the House, the Senate, the Federal Reserve, secret societies, and a fully complicit media. Let's see what half-truths, outright lies, and con games our little rascals are up to this week. Good morning. Welcome to the Robert Saviola Show here on AM 930 WBEN. Now, I want to do a little bit of a disclaimer before I go into what I'm going to talk about today. You see, it's been brought to my attention numerous times over the past decade or so that the field of psychiatry and psychology has been about 88% ineffective. That's what I read. That's the research I've done. I'm not taking anything away from psychiatrists and psychologists. I think their fields are necessary, and I think they do great work. The problem I have here is I think there's been so much fraud and corruption and greed through the pharmaceutical industry and things that have been forced on psychiatrists and psychologists that that their hands are tied kind of in trying to do the best they can with what they have. Okay? So the article I read, I want you to understand, and I hope you don't come in the middle and think that I'm just reading this and don't have, another way of looking at it. But it's because of the evil that's out there. Because, let's face it, I've been fighting against labeling things my whole life, even when I was a child. Right now with political correctness, people don't want to have labels on them, but here's a field that it's nothing but labels. Now, the title of this article is called Taking Apart Psychiatry, Fraud Kings of the Mind, Exploding the Myth of Good Science, okay? So this is from a USA Today article dated January 26th, 2016. And what it says here is, primary care doctors should screen all adults for depression, an expert panel recommended Tuesday. Now, did you see that? Primary care doctors should screen all adults for depression. An expert panel recommended Tuesday. That was in USA Today. Now, let's screen everybody to find out if they have mental disorders. Let's diagnose as many people as possible with mental disorders to give them toxic drugs. Wherever you see organized psychiatry operating, you see it trying to expand its domain and its dominance. The Hippocratic oath to do no harm. Are you kidding? You see, the first question to ask is, do these mental disorders have any scientific basis? There are now roughly 300 of them. They multiply like fruit flies. An open secret has been bleeding out into the public consciousness for the past decade. There are no definitive laboratory tests for any so-called mental disorder. Did you get that? No definitive laboratory tests for any so-called mental disorder. And along with that, all so-called mental disorders are concocted, named, labeled, described, and categorized by a committee of psychiatrists from menus of human behaviors. Their findings are published in periodically updated editions of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It's called the DSM, printed by the American Psychiatric Association. For years, even psychiatrists have been blowing the whistle on this hazy, crazy process of research. So even psychiatrists know that this is wrong. That's what I mean. That's why I say the field is good, the doctors are good, but it's the methods that are being forced on them that are bad, and what's happening in order to poison a whole population. So, of course, pharmaceutical companies who manufacture highly toxic drugs to treat every one of these disorders are leading the charge to invent more and more mental health categories so they can sell more drugs and make more money. In a PBS Frontline episode, Does ADHD Exist?, Dr. Russell Barkley, an eminent professor of psychiatry and neurology at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center, unintentionally spelled out the fraud. Now, see, I've always said ADHD never existed. Always said it from day one. PBS Frontline interviewer skeptics say that there's no biological marker that ADHD, is the one condition out there where there where there is no blood test and that no one knows what causes it. Barkley, that's tremendously naive, and it shows a great deal of illiteracy about science and about the mental health professions. A disorder doesn't have to have a blood test to be valid. If that were the case, all mental disorders would be invalid. There is no lab test for any mental disorder right now in our science. That doesn't make them invalid. That's what Barkley says. But oh, indeed, that does make them invalid, utterly and completely. You see, all 297 mental disorders, they're all hoaxes, because there are no defining tests of any kind to back up the diagnosis. You can sway and tap dance and bloviate all you like, and you won't escape the noose around your neck. We are looking at a science that isn't a science. It's called fraud, rank fraud. There's more. Under the radar, one of the great psychiatric stars who has been out in front inventing mental disorders went public. He blew the whistle on himself and his colleagues, and for years, almost no one noticed. His name is Dr. Alan Francis. And when he made very interesting statements to Gary Greenberg, author of a Wired article, Inside the Battle to Define Mental Illness, this was December 27th in 2010. Major media never picked up on the interview in any serious way. It never became a scandal. Now, why do you think that is? Pharmaceuticals would have killed them. Imagine all the money they spend. Dr. Alan Francis is the man who in 1994 headed up the project to write the latest edition of the Psychiatric Bible, the DSM-IV. This tome defines and labels and describes every official mental disorder. The DSM-IV eventually listed 297 of them. In an April 19, 1994 News Times piece, Scientist at Work, Daniel Goldman called Francis perhaps the most powerful psychiatrist in America at the moment. Well, there you go. And now he blew the whistle and said it's all fraud. Well, sure, if you're sculpting the entire canon of diagnosable mental disorders for your colleagues, for insurers, for the government, for pharma, who will sell the drugs matched up to the 297 diagnoses, or diagnoses, whatever you want to, how you pronounce it, you're right up there in the pantheon. Long after the DSM-IV had been put into print, it's probably the DSM-IV, I think, put into print, Dr. Francis talked to Wired's Greenberg and said the following: there is no definition of a mental disorder. It's bullcrap. I mean, you just can't define it. There you go. That's on the order of the designer of the Hindenburg. Looking at the burned rubble on the ground, remarking, well, I knew there would be a problem. You see, it's the same thing. After a suitable pause, Dr. Francis remarked to Greenberg, these concepts of distinct mental disorders are virtually impossible to define precisely with bright lines at the borders. Francis might have been obliquely referring to the fact that as baby, the DSM-IV had rearranged earlier editions or definitions of ADHD and bipolar to permit many more diagnoses, leading to a vast acceleration of drug dosing with highly powerful and toxic compounds. If this is medical science, then a duck is a rocket ship. To repeat, Dr. Francis' work on the DSM-IV allowed for more toxic drugs to be prescribed because the definitions of bipolar and ADHD were expanded to include more people. Adverse effects of, I think it's called valproate, given for bipolar diagnosis include acute life-threatening and even fatal liver toxicity, life-threatening inflammation of the pancreas, brain damage. Adverse effects of lithium, also given for bipolar diagnosis, include intracranial pressure leading to blindness, peripheral circulatory collapse, stupor, and coma. Adverse effects to Risperdal, given for bipolar and irritability stemming from autism, include serious impairment of cognitive function, fainting, restless muscles in face or neck, tremors, may be indicative of motor brain damage. Dr. Francis' self-admitted label juggling act also permitted the definition of ADHD to expand, thereby opening the door for greater and greater use of Ritalin and other similar compounds as the treatment of choice. So what about Ritalin? In 1986, the International Journal of the Addictions published most important literature review by Richard Scarnati. It was called An Outline of Hazardous Side Effects of Ritalin. And this was in volume 21, I think, pages 837 to 41. It says here, Scarnetti listed a large number of adverse effects of Ritalin and cited published journal articles which reported each of these symptoms. For every one of the following symptoms, Ritalin effects, there is at least one confirming source in the medical literature, like paranoid delusions, paranoid psychoses. It says hypomanic and manic symptoms, amphetamine-like psychosis, activation of psychotic symptoms, toxic psychosis, visual hallucinations, auditory hallucinations, can surpass LSD in producing bizarre experiences. There's more, but I got to take a break. I'll be right back. This gets more interesting. Stay tuned.
You've tried losing weight and nothing worked. You tried the diets, the supplements, counting calories, pills, acupuncture, even starving yourself, and nothing worked. Hi, this is Robert Saviola with Buffalo Hypnosis, and you've heard my clients telling their amazing stories on this station about how they easily lost weight at Buffalo Hypnosis. And I get the skepticism. I get the doubt. I really do. The thing is that hypnosis really works to lose weight, and it's 100% safe with no side effects. None. And it's nothing like you think it is. Call us now and we'll talk to you personally, 874-9050, for your free hypnosis consultation. We even offer a written service guarantee. Look, we've personally helped thousands of people in my office, and you can be one of them. You know, I can hear you thinking, I can't be hypnotized, or I'm too smart or strong-willed, or I'm a lost cause, or whatever. We've heard it all. Just come in and find out what we actually do here, and you can lose weight. This is about you, and you're worth it. Buffalo Hypnosis, 874-9050, 874-9050.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Robert Saviola Show here at AM 930 WBEN. I left the last segment talking about the field of psychiatry and the drugs that are being forced onto it and what they're doing to people. And we were talking about Ritalin, and I've already listed a bunch of side effects, but I want to say the rest of them. It says here, affects psychological thought processes, extreme withdrawal, terrified affect, started screaming, aggressiveness, insomnia, and since Ritalin is considered an amphetamine-type drug, accept amphetamine-like effects. That's what you should get. Psychic dependence, high abuse potential. It's a DEA Schedule II drug, decreased REM sleep. And when used with antidepressants, one may see dangerous reactions, including hypertension, seizures, and hypothermia. Convulsions, brain damage may be seen with this kind of abuse. So in the U.S. alone, there are at least 300,000 cases of motor brain damage incurred by people who have been prescribed so-called antipsychotic drugs, major tranquilizers, Risperdal, things like this. You know, and these are for people with bipolar stuff, and they're just tranquilizers. They dull the mind. That's all they do. They just dull the mind so that you're in a stupor. And that's supposed to solve the problem, right? And this psychiatric drug plague is accelerating across the land. You see, where the mainstream reporters and editors and newspapers and TV anchors who should be breaking the story and mercilessly hammering on it week after week, they are in a harness. So let's take a little trip back in time and review how one psychiatric drug, Prozac, escaped a bitter fate by hook and by crook. It's an instructive case, and this is very interesting. You're going to love this. Prozac, in fact, endured a rocky road in the press for a while because there were stories on it. Stories on it rarely appear now, though, but the major media have backed off of it. But on February 7th, 1991, Amy Marcus' Wall Street Journal article on the drug carried the headline, Murder Trials Introduce Prozac Defense. She wrote a spat of murder trials in which defendants claim they became violent when they took the antidepressant Prozac are imposing new problems for the drug's maker, Eli Lilly and Company. Also in February 1991, the New York Times ran a Prozac piece headlined, Suicidal Behavior Tied Again to Drug, Does Antidepressant Prompt Violence? That was February 7, 1991. In his landmark book, Toxic Psychiatry, Dr. Bregan mentions that on the Donahue Show on February 28, 1991, put together a group of individuals who have become compulsively self-destructive and murderous after taking Prozac, and the clamorous telephone and audience response confirmed the problem. And a shocking review study published in the Journal of Nervous and Mental Disorders written by Rhonda L. Fisher and Seymour Fisher, called Antidepressants for Children, concludes, despite unanimous literature of double-blind studies indicating that antidepressants are no more effective than placebos in treating depression in children and adolescents, such medications continue to be in wide use. So there you go. It doesn't work, and they still put it on. Now, what happened in this court, because they go on in lengthy detail, but what happened is the plaintiffs made the accusation that Prozac had induced a man to commit murder. This was the first action involving Prozac to reach a trial and jury, so it would establish a major precedent for a large number of other pending suits against the manufacturer. So the case, on September 14, 1989, Joseph Westbacker, a former employee of Standard Gravure in Louisville, Kentucky, walked into the workplace with an AK-47 and a Sig Sauer pistol, killed 8 people, wounded 12 others, and committed suicide. Family members of the victim subsequently sued Eli Lilly and the maker of Prozac on the grounds that Westbacker had been pushed over the edge into violence by the drug. The trial, after what many people thought was a very weak attack on Lilly by plaintiff's lawyer Smith, the jury came back in 5 hours with an easy verdict favoring Lilly and Prozac. Greenfield writes, Lilly's defense attorneys predicted the verdict would be the death knell for anti-Prozac litigation. But that wasn't the end of the Fentress case. You see, rumors began to circulate that the plaintiff's attorney Smith had made several prior oral agreements with Lilly concerning the evidence that would be presented in that case, the structure of a post-verdict settlement, and the potential resolution of Smith's other anti-Prozac cases. So in other words, the rumors declared that the plaintiff's lawyer Smith made a deal with Lilly to present a weak attack, to omit evidence damaging to Prozac, so that the jury would find Lilly innocent of all charges. In return, the case would be settled secretly, with Lilly paying out big monies to Smith's client. In this way, Lilly would avoid the exposure of a public settlement, and through the innocent verdict would discourage other potential plaintiffs from suing it over Prozac. See how that works? Corruption, and how many people died because of it? More people because of money and greed and evil. The rumors congealed. The judge of the Fentress case, John Potter, asked lawyers on both sides if money had changed hands. He wanted to know if the fix was in. The lawyer said no money had been paid without acknowledging that an agreement was in place. And of course they're going to say that. Judge Potter didn't stop there. In April 95, in court papers, Potter, the judge, wrote that he was surprised that the plaintiff's attorneys had introduced evidence that Lilly had been charged criminally for failing to report deaths from another of its drugs to the Food and Drug Administration. And Smith had fought hard during the Fentress trial to convince Potter to admit that evidence and then uncontrollably withheld it. So, in the judge's motion, he alleged that Philly sought to buy not just the verdict, but the court's judgment as well. So, this is how the fraud starts. They make these backdoor deals and stuff. It's quite a story. It has a lot of more detail to it, but you're going to get bored with this part because it just goes, this guy says, that guy says, who cares? I just want to know the meat and potatoes of it. So, let's face it. What's absurd is, first of all, many psychiatrists have explained and do explain to their patients that the drugs are there to correct a chemical imbalance. Second, if all well-trained psychiatrists have known all along that the chemical balance theory is a fraud, then why on earth have they been prescribing tons of drugs to their patients, since those drugs are developed on a false premise that they correct a chemical imbalance? You see, it says here, in his 2011 piece in Psychiatric Times, Dr. Pies tries to cover his colleagues in the psychiatric profession with this famous remark. In the past 30 years, I don't believe I have ever heard of a knowledgeable, well-trained psychiatrist make a preposterous claim about a chemical imbalance in the brain, except perhaps to mock it. The chemical imbalance image has been vigorously promoted by some pharmaceutical companies, often to the detriment of our patients' understanding. So what they're saying is there's no such thing as a chemical imbalance of the brain. That's what most psychiatrists believe, and it's been the pharmaceutical companies that have put that into place, that have called it a chemical imbalance. People have bought into it, and because they bought into it, they've taken drugs that were literally poison to kill them, to destroy them over time, to cause more and more symptoms and more problems, so they need more and more drugs to kill them even faster. All for the almighty dollar, and all with the FDA's approval. And this is why I say do not, under any circumstances, allow these drugs be given to you, because, you see, I don't think that there's a label for everything. What I think there is people just have personalities. And people need to be taught and trained like horses and dogs and anybody else, because we're living beings with minds and we're sentient. So here's what's happening. The honchos of psychiatry are seeing the handwriting on the wall, that their game has been exposed, and they're taking heavy flack on many fronts. The chemical imbalance theory is a fake. There are no defining physical tests of any of the 300 so-called mental disorders. All diagnoses are based on arbitrary clusters of menus of human behavior. The drugs are harmful, dangerous, toxic. Some of them induce violence, suicide, homicide. Some of the drugs cause brain damage. Psychiatry is a pseudoscience. So the shrinks have moved into another model, another con, another fraud, and they're looking for one. They have to move into another model. For example, genes play psychosocial factors, a mishmash of more unproven science, because now they're going to say it's your genes. New breakthrough research on the functioning of the brain is paying dividends and holds great promise. Professional gibberish. It's all gibberish, all the way down. Meanwhile, the business model demands drugs for sale. So even though the chemical imbalance nonsense has been discredited, it will continue on as a dead man walking a zombie. Big Pharma is going to back off. Trillions of dollars are at stake. They're at stake. And in the wake of Aurora, Colorado, Sandy Hook, the Naval Yard, and other mass shootings, and the height is expanded, we must have new community mental health centers all over America. Now look at all these that are fake, that it didn't even happen. And it's making it so that they need more mental health centers and more drugs, more fake diagnosis of mental disorders, more devastating drugs. So we have a fake instance take place, we get a fake diagnosis, we get mental disorders labeled, and we get devastating drugs given. And I'm telling you, it's nothing but a big farce. It's a big scam, and we're buying right into it. And if you want to fight for the right to refuse medication. Fight for the right of every patient to refuse medication for his or her child. Because what's going to happen is they're going to force you into medication. It's like forcing you to take the lethal injection. And I'm telling you, this is not a joke. I'll be right back.
Hi, this is Carl. I had a heart attack. It was suggested from a guy from work to come to Buffalo Hypnosis. I did quit smoking. Don't have the urge. Didn't gain weight. It's the quickest and greatest thing on the face of this earth, I think, because it's so easy to do.
My name is Mike Lomas, Alma, New York. And I walked in here 5 or 6 years ago to quit smoking. I haven't had one since.
Hi, my name's John. I'm from Kenmore. I came to Buffalo Hypnosis because I smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day. I had trouble breathing. I was looking for a way to get help, and I was a little skeptical at first. After the first session, I have not had a cigarette. I recommend it to anybody that wants to quit.
Even though results vary, we offer a written service guarantee and a free hypnosis screening. Over the past 10 years, we've helped thousands of your neighbors. This is the best time to quit smoking. It's your turn. Buffalo Hypnosis, 874-9050, 874-9050.
All right, I'm back. You're listening to the Robert Saviola Show here on AM 930 WBEN. So here we go. Again, it's nothing against the field. Because if the field was allowed to do its job without the drugs and the pressure from Big Pharma, I think that it'd be a lot better. I think they'd be able to help a lot more people. And personally, I'm a hypnotist, so I'm going to go with hypnosis because I believe people are becoming mentally sick now because of the drugs. I believe people are becoming mentally sick now because the water, the food, the contrails, the lies on TV, constantly bombarding people with lies over and over and over until they believe them. And it's happening. Again, Mark Twain. It's easier to fool someone than to convince them they've been fooled. And look what's going on here. It's ridiculous. And people have no clue, because years ago, when I was a kid, you wouldn't find people wanting to run all the time to get analyzed, something's wrong with them. Watch your diet. Water intake, proper diet, proper exercise, faith in God, proper upbringing, a conscience, sense of responsibility. It takes away all your mental disorders that you supposedly have. Immature people acting out. That's what we have now. We have no more adults. We have children. You see it on TV. You look at the debates. They're yelling at each other like idiots. Even the commentators and the presidential candidates, Megyn Kelly and Donald Trump, they had words. They did this. Who cares? Grow up. What happened to sticks and bones can break my sticks? What happened to sticks and stones can break my bones, but names can never hurt me? No, names are devastating. People lose jobs over it, go to jail over it, be sued over it. What happened? We were taught as kids the right way to do things. How did these kids change it? How did they get to ridiculousness? People are going insane. I say it every day. I am down here right now in Florida. I'm a single man, and I'm trying to find the right person in my life. And I am meeting people and stuff, and it's scary. It's scary when they start to talk, when you start to listen. The things they believe. You know, when they talk to you, they believe these things that are not true. Their whole idea of the world is false. It's a delusion. And because of it, they've gone a little crazy. It's scary. I'll tell you. I don't know where we're headed, but it doesn't look good. Somebody's got to take the reins and, whoa, Nelly, stop this horse and get it back on track. I repeat this every week, every darn week. And I do it for a reason. Because there's new listeners, and we need to be reminded. We can't just hear it one time and let it go away. No, because we're going to slip right back into that stupor. Every day we got to wake up, give our head a shake, and remember, stay calm, stay cool, stay alert, understand, they're trying to trick you. Now, am I being paranoid? No, it's the truth. I don't watch these debates anymore. I don't get involved in who said this and that. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Let's face it. Let's simplify everything. The only one out there that actually says anything that's worth listening to is Trump. The only one. And if he's really real, if it's not a distraction, if he's really real, they'll try to off him. And, everybody can be offed. Nobody's safe. But that's where we're headed. And like I said before, I really believe we're going to have bad things happen this year in the financial markets and the money and all that stuff. I really believe it. So I'm saying collect all the gold and silver you can. That's my advice. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. Anyway, God bless each and every one of you. If you're in a good relationship, nurture it. If you're not in a good relationship, try to find someone who can help you. But when you get my age, it's more and more difficult. Because if they're still single at my age, there's a reason, most likely. God bless each and every one of you. I'll talk to you next week. Take care, God willing.
Be sure to tune in next week to see how the Three Stooges, the executive, legislative, and judicial branches of government, continue to shred our Constitution with their hijinks and mayhem.
You and I have a rendezvous with destiny.